I never considered myself as someone who devours books. I've been reading about 10 pages every day just to get myself sort of into this reading habit, because otherwise, if I don't get sucked into the book instantly, it's really difficult for me to keep on reading. And I usually just move on to the next one or just completely stop reading for a while. And as an artist, I'm trying to consume a lot of different sorts of art, usually going to exhibitions or maybe then watching documentaries about interesting people. And I can honestly say that these books that I'm about to show you in this video have given me, I would say, most of my inspiration that I've had in the past couple of years. Because I feel like some books actually give you inspiration while you're reading them. And I feel like the inspiration from other books might come with a bit of a delay, and you might not notice that it actually came from reading a specific book. So today I wanted to share some of the books that have, I would say, profoundly changed my photography practice and the way I birth new ideas and really come up with new concepts for my project and in photography, and also just creating art in general. So the first book that I got introduced to, and I would say that really changed my way of looking at photography and contemporary photography, to be specific, was definitely John Berger, The Ways of Seeing. The first time I read this book was when I was studying photography, and I remember a teacher actually suggesting me this book because I was struggling a bit with the representation of my subjects that I was photographing. And this book was actually based on a BBC TV series that was published in 1972. The documentary series was so popular that they based this book on the TV series. The book describes how we look and perceive art, especially paintings, but Berger also talks about advertisements and photography, and I feel like it implies even more into our day and age, where there's so many photographs that we sort of don't really look at the representation that is going on in the pictures and whether that representation is actually coming from you yourself or the society that you're in. Berger actually argues that the way we see art is shaped by historical context, power structures, and social norms, all which I feel are huge topics to think about when creating art. That is, if you're interested in really looking deeper into your photographic art being more meaningful in a conceptual way. This book was actually really influential when I started to create portraits of my mother, because I had zero understanding of what representation can look like and how I was deciding to portray my mother in my pictures. Because we as photographers and artists in general, if we are capturing someone's image or character, we have the power to decide what kind of representation we put on the picture, and also how we communicate specific topics through our images. And understanding through what lens we're looking at what we are portraying, I feel is huge in understanding it, but then also transforming it. I actually understood that I was portraying my mother through male gaze, because that was just something that I was used to because of my background, being working in the harbor and being surrounded by a lot of men. That was the way that I started my photography series with my mother, but also then I remember thinking that I didn't have a clue that I was doing it before I read this book, and I understood that the way that I was guiding her to pose or just directing her in the images was pretty much in the end just becoming a picture that could have been taken by a male photographer. I would say that this book will definitely encourage you to take a bit of a more active role as the creator of your images and questioning the assumptions of our visual culture. I feel like photographers and artists in general are at times hitting a plateau, and I feel like that's totally normal. Going through periods of times where you're not quite inspired in what you're doing doesn't mean that you don't like what you're doing anymore. It just means that you need to find a new source of inspiration. That is why I feel like whenever we're traveling, we're actually more prone to looking at the world in a new way because we are in a new place. But I feel like you can also do this in the same sort of familiar surroundings with just tweaking the way you look at your surroundings. And I would say that this applies to all artists in general, not only photographers. I remember being introduced to this book when I was doing my internship with photography artist at the time, and I was so surprised that I didn't know about this book beforehand. And the book I'm referring to is Photographers Playbook. This book, I have to say, definitely brought new assignments, new inspiration, new ways of looking at everything that I was surrounded with just a new, fresh pair of eyes. This book is filled with photography assignments, 307 to be exact. Some of the artists that are giving these assignments are Amy Arbus, Eric Kessels, and Alex Suth. So I would say definitely great artists giving great advice. These assignments are not the basic ones that you see, like photograph everything that is blue or just photograph water, like, because these are great assignments, but in their simplicity they're also just really scratching the surface. And we as photographers, I feel like what we are sometimes missing is the fact that we don't go deeper in the pictures that we create. We don't really ask questions like, why are we doing this? How could I change how I perceive this image or my subject? Really, we are just creating pictures out of the things that we actually see. But I would say this book is definitely giving you more of this contemporary look into your photographs, and the assignments are really asking you questions where you can start doing more self-reflection on what you are actually producing and why you are producing those images. Because if you're really looking into becoming a better storyteller in your photography and just challenging your perspective, I really urge you to read this book. And the best part is you don't need to read all of the 307 assignments at the same time. I feel like you can take one assignment, try to create it, maybe reflect back on it, then maybe you take a bit of a break and you don't read the book at all. And then there's a day where you're not quite inspired and you come back to it. What I like to do is just, I sort of close my eyes and I just like decide on an assignment that comes up, point my finger onto an assignment, and I just choose it. And like there's one assignment that says photograph someone doing something to someone else. I feel like this is a great book for inspiration specifically, and just maybe I would say deepening your photography practice and understanding what you are actually photographing. Another of my favorite books that takes a bit of a different approach to creativity is The 4 Agreements. I would say that this book isn't specifically for photographers or artists, but it is a spiritual take on life itself and how you view life and how you go about your life. So I feel that reading things that are on the spiritual path are great books to help you to become more creative, because spirituality and creativity are inherently connected, and I feel that you cannot go about one without the other. So I would even go as far as saying that this book is a roadmap to happiness, at least for me. Along with obviously meditation, this book helped me to understand and become more aware of the thoughts that I was having and what thoughts I was also entertaining, because that was the reality that I was creating. So this book definitely helped me in becoming more mindful and just understanding what is the direction that I want to take with my creative path. This book really challenges your life, and it gives you like these simple truths that you can live by, and it really offers you transformational results even if you aren't abiding to these 4 agreements that are in the book. I really loved how thought-provoking this book became, and I feel like it really gave me a different outlook on what I was doing in my photography, and very much in a spiritual way. If you're really looking into deepening your photography practice, which I think you are if you're here watching this video, and you would say that you don't have inspirational artists or photographers per se, the photography as contemporary art is a great introduction to all sorts of different topics on photography field, but also different artists that are touching these topics. This book is a great recommendation. The book is filled with artists that emphasize the material and physical properties of photography, some of which use photography as just one component in their practice. There's themed chapters which all go through different topics, and one of the topics being narrative and storytelling, photographing the everyday and the insignificant, and the use of photography in conceptual art. I really like this book because this book really taught me, first of all, about other photographers, because it's sometimes really difficult to find inspiration unless you're really sure of what kind of photographers you're looking for. But let's say that you're starting out in photography and you're not even sure what are the different topics that photographers touch, and you're not even sure about everything that goes into photography. So this book really introduces you to photographers that are not even well known, but maybe something that they produce was groundbreaking at the time. So being introduced and really knowing sort of the history of photography, and then through that finding inspiration in what you are doing in photography is, I think, really profound. And I think that this should be like the basis for each photographer when they are starting out. And even if you're not just starting out, but you have like been photographing for a while and you just want to, I would say, deepen your knowledge, in the sense of, even when I read this book, I was already studying photography for like 4 years, 5 years. And when I read this book, there was so many photographers that I've never heard of, and I was really amazed by how much inspiration it gave me, and specifically in a conceptual way. Definitely, if you want to conceptualize what you're doing, finding reasons for the topics that you're creating, and creating photographic art that would be meaningful on a deeper level. I would say that it really just opens up the different creative processes other photographers are having. It might give you a bit of an insight what it takes to create specific sorts of imagery. The last book that I wanted to introduce you to, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to add it to the list because I haven't read it fully. I started it only a couple of weeks ago, but I'm already so convinced that it's a great book, and I wanted to also add it to the list. The book being The Artist's Way. I actually found out about this book on TikTok, and there was a lot of people suggesting the book and telling how it, through spiritual ways, opened up their creative process and gave new ideas out of nowhere, because you would be approaching your creativity and the whole process through spiritual means. And I got instantly interested, obviously, because I'm so into everything spirituality related. So I instantly ordered the book, and I've been reading it for a couple of weeks now. And I will be sharing my full honest opinion about the book when I've finished it. But so far I have gotten sort of downloads of new ideas that I wanted to produce, and not in moments where I've been trying to really get an idea out or really thinking about it and writing about it. It's been more in moments where I haven't thought of creative things at all, and I've gotten an idea out of nowhere. It almost feels like magic having these ideas. Whenever you're getting a creative idea, write them down immediately, because if you think that you're gonna remember it and, you know, later during the day, or you'll just write it down when you have the time, you will forget about it. So please write things down whenever you have the idea at that specific moment. So far I can definitely say that it's opened my creative process, like really understanding more what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, which I feel like is the theme of this video, because I wanted to introduce you to books that will not only give you more inspiration, but also understand who you are as an artist. So this book has definitely, as far as I've been reading it, it has given me glimpses of that, definitely. Like I said, a spiritual take on your creative journey. The best part of this book is that it's been used by a lot of creators, like the film director Martin Scorsese, also the writer of Eat, Pray and Love, Elizabeth Gilbert, and everyone is really praising the book, stating not only in the actual book, but also if you just Google the book and see the reviews that has been given, it's mostly authors, film directors, maybe painters, photographers. People are really giving their feedback on the book and how it opened their period of being stuck in their creative process, and how the book actually took them further in that process and gave them new inspiration. So you can probably guess that I'm super excited in reading this book. I've been already like reading as much as I can, but there hasn't been much time because I've been coming home pretty late, but I'm really excited to dive into this book. Also, many reviews that I found online were about this book being a life changer, because it really gives people a way to articulate their life purpose through creativity, which is obviously fundamentally something that I feel that we came here to do, just using our voice to create something and maybe having an impact on something. So if you're like me, who considers themselves to be someone who doesn't read that often, I would definitely recommend to reading some of these books. I'm sure you'll find some of that lost creativity and be surprised by the inspiration that will just start flowing into your life.